Hello everyone and welcome back to the Chess 9LX. I should be saying welcome as this is the first video I'm making on the event, and sorry about no videos for the past couple of days. I think 4 or 5 maybe even. I will like The Little Mermaid, my daughter's been watching on repeat for the past few days. I've also lost my voice, but it is returning now, and just in time to cover a couple of Kasparov games before the final day of the Chess 9LX, as they are still calling it. It's basically official random. They prefer Chess 9LX. I never really understood that. But yeah, we're going to show 2 games by Kasparov. He's doing really well in the event. Always very happy to see that, which means he will come back next year. And yeah, I mean, he's 61 years old already, former world classical champion. Always a pleasure to see how he's doing and how he prepares for these events. Okay, you don't have to really prepare theory because there's always a new position, but you still have to, I mean, I guess he does some conditioning and maybe some tactics. And also, before we check out the games, have you guys seen the new app by Magnus and the company called Fantasy AS? It's called Takes. I will refrain from sharing my opinion on the app just yet. I'm very much interested in what you guys think about it if you have checked it out. Now, that being said, let's see. The first one we're covering, Leinier Dominguez Perez versus Kasparov from the first day. Let's check it out. Leinier with white opens with pawn to d4, and okay, the setup is pretty cool. You have the queens on the side of the board, queens on a1 and a8, the rook also on b8 and g8. So nothing too out of the ordinary. The bishops are actually where they're supposed to be. So if we switch, let's say, the queen and this knight, it's already a very familiar position. And most of these chess 960 positions really turn into normal chess positions within the first 10 moves, so to say. So okay, d4, we have pawn to d5, knight to d3, and knight to d6. We have pawn to b3, and knight to g6. We have pawn to f3 and pawn to e6. Okay, just, keeping everything solid. Knight h to f2, and now pawn to b6. Kasparov also opens up his queen. G3 and bishop to e7. We have bishop to g2. Castles kingside. Remember, in chess 960 or in official random or chess 9LX, you castle by doing everything you would normally. You just have to clear the path between the king and the rook. And then when you castle, it doesn't matter where the king and rook were. The king and the rook will be placed in a position where they would be, even if you castled in normal chess, which means that now once we castle, okay, it's a normal castling position, but it would be exactly the same if, for example, the rook was on e8. You would castle and it would be exactly the same. Okay, castles kingside by Leinier as well. Bishop to b7. We have rook to e1, and now rook b to c8. We have bishop to b2 and rook f to d8. It's already a very interesting position. One, well, that could arise from normal chess. The queen bishop battery working strong for both sides. We have pawn to e4. Leinier strikes first. Maybe he could have prepared it first a little bit. Maybe rook b does belong on c1. But okay, he strikes with pawn to e4. D captures on e4. We have D captures, F captures, and now pawn to f5 by Kasparov. Pawn to d5, and now F captures on e5. And the problem is, even though, okay, you are defending this square 3 times, it's not that great. For example, bishop captures, knight captures, and d6 captures. It's a very good position for Kasparov. Once that light square bishop comes off the board, it's going to be very difficult to defend. So Leinier says, all right, let's try something else. Bishop to h3. He wants to give up the knight on d3 to go for bishop captures and win some material. It's not really winning material. He will give up 2 pieces for the rook, but he decides that it's better than to give up the light square bishop in the way we've just shown. So bishop captures on d5, and now pawn to c4, kicking away the bishop, but now Kasparov just plays e captures on d3. C captures on d5. We have knight to f5, and now bishop back to g2. Nicely aligning the bishop with Kasparov's queen on a8. And here, okay, it's a really crazy position. There are so many moves you could play here, and I'm sure you guys are already looking at some of them. But what Kasparov played is just really, Kasparov-esque, so to say. Okay, d2 is a move that you might throw in. Maybe you can't really calculate it. It's a rapid game after all, but Kasparov plays bishop to c5. It is the top move recommended by the engine, and it just shows that this is not a problem. This is not an issue whatsoever. Key being that in the game, pawn to b4 was played. But just let's say you capture, open up an attack on black's queen. What was Kasparov's idea with bishop to c5? It was actually queen to b8, followed by pawn to b5, followed by queen to b6, and then with the queen-bishop battery, he would have a completely winning game here, especially with the pass to d-pawn. So that was Kasparov's idea with this bishop to c5 move. But Lenier doesn't like it. Pawn to b4. He wants to get the bishop off of this diagonal. But now Kasparov plays another top move. Bishop captures on f2 with check. King captures and pawn to c5. He's saying, okay, well, you could capture en passant. You could capture on e6. If I play c4 and cement this pawn on d3, that's it. So king to g1, probably d captures on e6 is a little bit better, but Kasparov will just play queen to b8, and it's still perfectly fine. King to g1, we have e captures on d5, and now bishop to h3. Lenier holding by a thread here, and there is only one winning move for Kasparov. Yeah, I say holding on by a thread, but only if you always play the top engine move, which Kasparov does. He plays rook to f8, defends the knight. We have rook to f1 and knight to g to e7. B captures on c5, B captures and bishop to e5. Now getting the bishop into the game so you can finally activate that queen on a1. Queen to c6 now both activate, and queen to c3. Pawn to c4. It's pretty much an equal position, aside from the fact that Kasparov has 3 pawns marching forward to become queens. Queen to b4, not much to do there. Maybe queen to b7. That lift might be something if you trade queens and then you're able to put some pressure on that g7 pawn. Maybe you kick away the knight, so maybe something there. Queen to h6, attacking the bishop on h3. Bishop captures, we have knight captures, and now bishop to f4, attacking Kasparov's queen. Queen to c6 and bishop to e5. Now getting ready for queen to b7, but Kasparov doesn't care. He could even start pushing right away with c3, but he goes pawn to d4. Lenier goes queen to b7, and okay, now you don't want to blunder something like g4 or rook captures on f5, but Kasparov just trades queens. Captures, and here rook to c5. Beautiful move by Kasparov, and he was in this position on move 31 that Lenier Dominguez Perez resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. You resign because, well, the real threat is how do you move the knight to capture on g7? The problem is g4 is too slow. It's met with rook captures on e5, of course. And if you go for rook captures on f5 to play rook captures on g7 next, of course not rook captures on f5, rook captures on e5. Rook captures on f5 is now the move because you free up the f8 square for the black king. And now rook captures on g7 check, you don't go to h8, even though you could, it's still winning. Just king f8, and there's no move here for black. Obviously, the bishop is hanging and the rook is hanging. That's game over. So yeah, very nicely done by Kasparov, taking down Lenier like this. And now let's see what happened in the last game. Sorry, in the next game. This one was against Sam Shankland, and you can see that. Wow, that's that's a bit of a weird rating. You can see that Kasparov's rating is much higher than everyone else's. Which is, normal, as this is the rating that Kasparov retired with, his rapid rating that he retired with, and it is, it is a pretty big rating, 2783. All right, so let's see this one, and his game against Hikaru Nakamura was also very interesting. In the end, it ended in a draw, but could have gone, either way. So let's see it. Kasparov versus Sam Shankland. Kasparov, this game opens with pawn to f4, so it's again, a very exciting position. The knight's on the king's side with the bishop on the f-file, queen on d1, where the queen should be. So, develop a few pieces, and again, we're in normal chess territory. Pawn to e6, knight f3, and pawn to f5 by Shankland. We have knight to f2, knight to f6, and now pawn to e4. We have pawn to b6, opening up the light square bishop. No, pawn to b5 was played here. Yeah, it makes more sense. It's nicely defended, and also the bishop cannot go to c4. We have d3 defending on e4 and bishop to c5. We have queen to d2, knight to g6, nicely developing, and castles queenside. And this is what I was talking about. So you just have to clear all the squares that the king and rook need to use to perform castling, and then you can castle. That's pretty much it. So these are the squares that you need to castle queenside. You just castle queenside, and now they're in the same position as they would be if you castled queenside in normal chess. Once you get the hang of that, it's just very interesting. And also, if your opponent isn't used to that, and if you try playing Chess 960 online, they'll mount a full attack. They will go after you on the king side, and then you'll just escape all the way to the queen side, or vice versa, and they will not know what hit them. Okay, so bishop captures on f2. Sam decides to give up the bishop pair. Queen captures, and now f captures on e4. But Kasparov doesn't capture, even though you could capture and then capture on a7. For some reason, Kasparov doesn't like this a7 pawn. He goes knight to g5, which also makes sense, definitely. And now pawn to e3, giving back the pawn, freeing up the light square bishop. Queen captures on e3 and knight to d5. Sam gave back some material to activate his pieces. We have queen to g3. Again, it's very hard to say why Kasparov doesn't capture this pawn. Of course, Kasparov is a very initiative-oriented player, but still, that looks like a good pawn. But yeah, we should all, look up to Kasparov and not go after material. Queen g3, we have queen to f6, and now knight captures on h7. It's like they're, neither of them wants to play what the other guy wants them to play, even though it's the best move. So queen f6 met with knight captures on h7. Queen captures on f4 with check, and Kasparov trades. We have queen captures, knight d captures on f4, and pawn to g3, getting the pawn off of g2. Knight to d5, and now pawn to h4. And okay, we have a normal endgame. Kasparov slightly better, probably due to the bishop pair once the bishop comes alive, and he does have this 2-1 advantage on the king side. If he plays g4 and h5, and g5 h6, he will create a passed pawn. So knight g to e7, we have bishop to h3 and pawn to b4. We have king to d2, rook to b5, getting the rook into the game this way, and rook to f1, preparing for a nice rook lift. Maybe rook f7, maybe rook f8, depending on what Sam plays. Rook to a5 goes after the a2 pawn, and pawn to b3, going after the b7 pawn. And it's definitely not worth it capturing on a2 to give up the b7 pawn, because then Kasparov just has two connected passed pawns on the king side. So knight to f5 defending, well, you're not really defending, as it can be captured. That's exactly what Kasparov does. Bishop captures, e captures. However, he doesn't go for the g7 pawn. He plays rook captures on f5. If you play bishop captures on g7 here, then rook e7, and you've blundered a piece all of a sudden. So you have to be careful. Rook d to e1, and now rook to g8. Sam realized he's not tricking Kasparov. He has to defend the pawn. Rook captures on f5. Luckily, no discoveries by this knight. Otherwise, it would be a free rook. And rook captures on a2. We have rook to f8 with check. Rook captures, knight captures, and now pawn to knight captures and pawn to a5. And now Shanklin's plan is pawn to a4, pawn captures, the c2 pawn is pinned, and this is how he wants to attack Kasparov's king. But bishop captures on g7, Kasparov beautifully calculates it all the way. Pawn to a4, and now look at this, rook to e8 with check, king to b7, and knight captures on d7. This is how he does it, and now a captures on b3 will be met with knight to c5 check, and the knight will pick up the b3 pawn. So Kasparov saw this quite a few moves ago. Knight to b6 now, going after the knight, and still knight c5 check, king to a7, and now bishop to d4 even. Kasparov playing very, very active, very beautiful chess. And there's the knight, there's the bishop, there's the rook, everything going after that black king. But also, if you even if you don't have that, you still have the 2 connected pass pawns on the king side. So Kasparov is completely winning. We just have to see his technique. We have bishop to d5, b captures on a4, and pawn to b3. Okay, the c2 pawn is pinned. Sam finally gets to that. Knight captures on b3, bishop captures, and now pawn to a5. The pawn to a5, again, the only winning idea, but Kasparov figured it out. You cannot, defend everything. The bishop is hanging and the knight is hanging, and if you go rook captures on a5, then of course you just capture on b6 first to have even less material, and then rook b3, rook b8 to check. You pick up the bishop, and it's 4 pawns versus 1, of course, completely winning. So after a5, bishop captures on c2 was played, a captures on b6, c captures, and rook to d8. King to b7, and now bishop to e5. Everything is nicely defended, and now Kasparov's pawns are marching forward. We have bishop to a4, opening up a discovery. Notice Kasparov's everything is on dark squares, so you don't have to worry. We have king to e3, bishop to d1, and king to f4. We have pawn to b5, also starting to advance the passed b pawn, king to g5. The pawn on g3 will remain there to prevent any checks from the rook, and now you will just march that h-pawn up the board to win the game. Rook to e2 attacks the bishop, pawn to d4 defends. We have rook to e4, hoping for some rook to g4 action, but bishop to f4, and he was in this position on move 40 that Sam Shankland resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. So yeah, beautifully played by Kasparov. He did lose one game to Wesley So in the beginning, but then he bounced back nicely with 2 wins. And these are the standings after a couple of rounds, after 6 rounds. Sorry, those are not the standings. Where are my standings? I'm pretty sure I have it somewhere here. Just give me a second. Okay, there they are. Sorry about that. Sometimes I save stuff elsewhere. There we go. All right, so these are the standings. Fabiano Caruana with 5 out of 6. He's first and he's undefeated. 4 wins and 2 draws. Absolutely incredible. Hikaru second with 4.5. Sevian sharing third with Kasparov 3.5. Then Wesley So, Grigori Oparin, Sam Shankland, Levon Aronian, Ray Robson, and Leinier Dominguez. Really, great start for Kasparov, and I feel like it's like this every year. Every year he comes back to play this tournament, and every year, like, first day is the best, second day sometimes it's a little worse, sometimes it's also great, and then on the third day it just doesn't go his way. We'll see what happens in this one, because he has a chance to do a lot of damage here. Today on day 3 he will face Levon Aronian, Fabiano Caruana, and Sam Sevian. So basically Sevian and Fabiano, who are also ahead of him, and Levon, okay, currently on 2 points, but in chess 960 I feel like Levon is one of the most dangerous opponents you could ever face. So we'll see how it goes for Kasparov. Yeah, sorry about no videos for the past few days. Like I said, no voice, no videos. That's how I roll. And if anything happened that you really enjoyed, just use that hashtag suggestion. I will do my best to go over it. Hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank my uncle for my uncle's chess lessons, Carl Cerudi, Amir Kanchuk, Escalator Junkie, and Richard Lapka for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions, but also closing up on the chess 960 action. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day. And yeah, it's Fischer Random. See you soon.